Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is now time to wrap up Rankings Day with the wide receiver position. There's quite a few to talk about, so let's not take too long with this introduction. Just a reminder, these are my preliminary rankings. I have not done my projections yet. They take a while. Talked about that a little bit in the running backs video if you really want to know why they take a while. But here, I started with the expert consensus rankings as of Tuesday. Those are from Fantasy Pros. It's basically an average of the experts and then where they rank based on the average ranking from a bunch of experts. Then I move them around, and there can be players that are way out of my thought process that I try to move up, but there's a bit of a mental task to move things up against the experts. And once my projections are in, then I'll feel more comfortable when my biases get confirmed. Sometimes there will be surprises that I'll say, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. So when my projections get finished, some players will have major jumps, and there would definitely be some juggling around. So please check out the rankings. They'll be up on Thursday at www.theFFforge.com. Anytime they get updated throughout the week, but my final rankings are up on Sunday when I go live 1 hour before kickoff. I do try to keep the website rankings up to date as well, but as I'm getting prepared Sunday morning, at a certain point I can't continue to update two different sheets, so I just have to update the one that I will have on the screen here, and on Sunday morning. Let's get to it. I will be talking about the players who I have a significant difference of opinion on compared to the experts. Starting off here with the wide receiver ones, I have Justin Jefferson in my number one spot this week. Great matchup there against Washington. Followed by Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle at 6th, DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Olave, Tyler Lockett, and T. Higgins. Tyler Lockett is the only one here that I will be talking about, who I have 4 spots ahead of the ECR. The ECR is 15. I have him at 11. Going up against Arizona. Not a great matchup for wide receivers. Not the worst in the world, but they do tend to limit the yards per target, yards per catch on teams. And so I think Tyler Lockett's the one out of those two who benefits more from this matchup. So I just like him a little bit more than like a DK in this matchup. Otherwise, I have him up here because I moved some other players down more so than I moved him up, like a T. Higgins, for instance. Now, let's move on to my wide receiver 2s, where at 13, I have Mike Evans, followed by DK Metcalf, Tyler Boyd, DJ Moore, Christian Kirk, Devonta Smith, Chris Godwin, Terry McLaurin, Jacoby Myers, Adam Thielen, Keenan Allen, and Curtis Samuel to wrap them up. DK Metcalf, I have 4 spots ahead of the ECR. I have him at 14. The ECR is 18. Going up against Arizona, once again, not the world's best matchup, but I do think that that's a game that could be high scoring. It could also be totally low scoring, and there might not be a lot of fantasy points. It could go either way. Definitely see that, but there's just some issues that I have with some other players that the experts had a little bit higher, that some of these guys end up moving up a little bit. But that's not really the case for Christian Kirk. I very much intend to move him up even more. I just had a tough time without getting a little bit of confirmation bias from my projections on moving him up further. And so we'll see what the projections have to say, if they are in agreement with me here. But I have him at 17, which is 5 spots ahead of the ECR. The ECR is 22, and I am absolutely loving Christian Kirk this week. Going up against Las Vegas, I think that this could be a big boom week for Christian Kirk, a top 3 finish type of week, and so I want to represent that as much as I can in my final rankings. So he'll be as high as I can go justifiably. Now, on to Chris Godwin, who I have 6 spots below the ECR. The ECR is 13 on him. I have him at 19. This really comes down to what's the ceiling here. They've had a very, very low ADOT, not explosive passing attack there in Tampa Bay. Things do seem to be turning around minorly, but I think there are just some inherent issues at quarterback too, and said it in the beginning of the year, and I'll continue to say, you never bet against Tom Brady. But at this point, I'm just not betting at all. I'm not betting against him. I'm not betting for him. Just some concerns. I don't dislike Chris Godwin this week, but I do not like him as much as the experts, and that just really comes down to, I think he's more of a floor play than a ceiling play, and ultimately, we want a lot of points, not enough points to not lose. We want to win our matchups. So that's that ranking, but going up against Los Angeles, I don't know if I said that, so it's a neutral matchup overall there. And that will bring us to our wide receiver threes, or the start of our flex wide receivers for those in 2 wide receiver leagues. Starting off at wide receiver 25, I have Juju Smith-Schuster, followed by Darnell Mooney, Gabe Davis, Michael Pittman Jr., Rondale Moore. At wide receiver 30, I have Devin Duvernay, followed by Romeo Doubs, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Brandon Cooks, Hunter Renfrow, and Zay Jones to wrap up the wide receiver threes at wide receiver 36. As far as Juju Smith-Schuster goes, good matchup here going up against Tennessee. I expect that Kansas City offense to do well against them. So I like him. I have him 4 spots ahead of the ECR. I'm at 25. ECR is 29 on him. I like him more than like Gabe Davis here, who's ranked really highly, and I love that upside, but at this point hasn't happened enough weeks that I'm willing to take some more guaranteed options on some players. Darnell Mooney is not necessarily a guaranteed option. Going up against Miami, I have him 4 spots ahead of the ECR. I'm at 26th. The ECR on him is 30th. It could be, Miami could put up a lot of points, so it's a ceiling play there. I'll see what my projections end up saying on some of these players. He's a guy who I will definitely be listening to the projections more than anything, just as far as me not being comfortable necessarily with having him this high, but I do like him this week regardless. And now that brings us right to Gabe Davis, who is going up against the Jets. I have him 13 spots behind the ECR. The ECR is 14 on him. I have him at 27. Don't really understand that ECR ranking. Maybe I forgot about an injury or something. Maybe I'm missing something. It's always possible. That does happen. But for me, that's a little rich for my blood. And I love Gaby Davey. But, boy, I don't know. Let's move on to Michael Pittman, who I have 9 spots behind the ECR. The ECR on him is 19. I have him at 28. Going up against New England is a pretty rough matchup. They did pass more than I expected last week. That ended up costing me my matchup, playing Wan'Dale Robinson over him. I just thought he was a safer floor play. Didn't trust the Michael Pittman thing. So that stunk. Hopefully he'll do better this week than he did last week, but I don't see the ceiling there with this offense as it is in a tougher matchup. And we all know the legend of Bill Belichick versus rookie quarterbacks, or not even necessarily rookie, but like first-time starting quarterbacks. This is Ehlinger's 2nd game, so might be able to dial up some confusing things for Ehlinger and really, really make that passing attack all the harder. Would have liked, just from a team standpoint, would have liked to see them stick to that run a little bit more last week. But also good that they had some faith. I mean, for me being a Michael Pittman owner, also good that they had some faith in letting Ehlinger throw the ball like 22 times. So not bad in a first start. Now on to Devin Duvernay, who I have ranked 30th, 4 spots ahead of the ECR. The ECR on him is a 34. Going up against New Orleans, pretty much a neutral matchup. They have looked a little better in recent weeks. Is my confidence level throwing Devin Duvernay out there super high? Not necessarily, but Rashad Bateman is out for a while. They are going to have to get fantasy points somewhere. They're going to have to throw the ball somewhere. And the upside is always there with Devin Duvernay, even when they have all of their weapons on the field. But we saw a few weeks ago that they actually game planned around him, and it worked pretty nicely. That's not something they can do every week, but those are some things that they can sprinkle in there. Just like, did he end up getting a rushing touchdown? See the guy? Might have gotten a rushing touchdown last weekend, and that was something that we saw from that game plan in, I believe that was week 7, where they really actually game planned around Duvernay. So expect to see those elements continue throughout week in and week out. Now on to my wide receiver 34, Brandon Cooks, who I have 9 spots behind the ECR. The ECR on him is 25, going up against Philadelphia. Look at how rad that matchup is, and that's for a reason. Philadelphia's a really good defense, and they're going up against Davis Mills this week. I expect them to put up points quickly on Houston. I don't know if Houston will actually pass the ball more than they normally do or not because of that. They might stick to the rushing attack no matter how far behind they are or not. But regardless, if Brandon Cooks plays this week, and that's another factor, he's upset. He didn't get traded, and on Monday Tuesday he was not at practice for personal reasons, which is pretty obvious what's going on there. So there's some friction going on with Brandon Cooks. He may not even play this week, and that's always possible. Not a good matchup. Not good vibes coming from that whole situation right now. So I'm not too excited about Brandon Cooks, but if he's out there at a certain point, you have to throw him out there and hope for the best, hope for one big play. Just hasn't been a lot of that this season. Now on to my wide receiver 4s, back end flexes. There's a certain point at wide receiver where the difference between 27 and, well, we'll say like 38, 39 isn't the biggest of differences in the world. And maybe we'll move to like 28-ish or 29 through there. Whatever. So starting off at wide receiver 37, I have Joshua Palmer, followed by Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Mack Hollins, Isaiah McKenzie, Allen Robinson II, Robert Woods in at 42, then Alec Pierce, Paris Campbell, Marvin Jones Jr., Mecole Hardman, Josh Reynolds, and KJ Osborne to wrap up that group. Wide receivers also die out. There's just a lot of buys this week, and so my projections will definitely have some influences here. But felt like Josh Palmer was definitely too low here going up against Atlanta at 42, so I have him 5 spots ahead of the ECR. I'm at 37. Great smash matchup. What's not to like there? Other than the fact that Los Angeles Chargers offense could look like Cincinnati, God forbid. I think they have a little bit more. I don't think it'll look like that. We'll just say that. Then Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I have at wide receiver 38, which is 8 spots ahead of the ECR. The ECR in him is 46, going up against Tennessee. Fairly good matchup. Do expect Kansas City to try and get a good lead against Tennessee to get them off of that rushing attack as early as they can, because that is how Tennessee can upset them. They get that rushing attack established, Kansas City can all of a sudden get in trouble with a worn-down defense. Now on to Mack Hollins, who I have ranked 39th. ECR on him is 43, so I have him 4 spots ahead of the ECR going up against Jacksonville. It's a similarly decent matchup to the Tennessee one. Maybe a little worse, but not according to the gauge there, really. So I have liked Mack Hollins as much as you can like him all season, and this week with just issues going on at other players, it's this high up that I would give him my hope and a prayer of playing him if I had to. Now on to Allen Robinson, who I have 5 spots behind the ECR. So yes, I would start Mack Hollins over A-Rob. There were some positive signs last week for A-Rob, so that is good. But I have him ranked 41st. He is ECR 36. And not a great matchup there against Tampa Bay, but they do have a pretty banged up defense right now, so that helps things out too. Let's move on to Robert Woods, who I have ranked 42nd. The ECR on him is 35th, so I have him 7 spots behind the ECR. Great matchup there against Kansas City. I understand. I had to move him up, actually. I had him even further back, and then I was like, at a certain point, you have to hope for that touchdown, essentially, up against Kansas City. And Tennessee may have their highest passing attack if Ryan Tannehill is in there this week. And I should say, if Malik Willis is in there, then I'll move Robert Woods back a little bit. But if Ryan Tannehill is playing, this may be the week where their passing attack has the most attempts, the most yards all season long. So, don't necessarily want to miss out on that if I'm having to rely on somebody this far back in the rankings. Now on to Josh Reynolds, who I have ranked 47th. The ECR is 6 on him. The ECR is 41. I have him 6 spots behind the ECR at 47. Going up against Green Bay, they're a pretty limiting defense as far as big play goes. That's the Josh Reynolds thing. I expect a Justin Jefferson-like target share and maybe even defensive plan going up against Amon-Ra St. Brown, which would just mean a lot of short targets and yak. You take 1 or 2 bombs to Josh Reynolds throughout the game and just to open things up and keep the defense as honest as you can. That's pretty much the game attack that I'm expecting and the defensive job that I'm expecting. Good week for Amon-Ra St. Brown, probably. And that brings us to our wide receiver 5s. At 49, I have Tyquan Thornton, Sammy Watkins, Olamide Zaccheaus, Traquan Smith, Marquez Callaway, Julio Jones, Braxton Berrios, Terrace Marshall Jr., Jeff Van Jefferson, Elijah Moore, Khalif Raymond. And to wrap that up at wide receiver 60, I have Marquise Goodwin. So, Julio Jones, I have 5 spots ahead of the ECR. I have him at 54. ECR is 59 against him, going up against the Rams. Once again, decent matchup through the air. And actually, thought of this last night. For these Tampa Bay wide receivers, they all cannibalize each other a little bit. But as far as game plan goes, we saw Tampa Bay go up against Dallas and rush the ball, like 3 times in the game or something crazy. Just a pure aerial raid. And I could see them doing that this week against the Rams, who are very good against the run. They might just say, we're not even going to mess with the run. We're just going to pass this ball a lot. So I kind of like those Tampa Bay receivers in that regard, in the hopes that that is the game plan this week, especially so for PPR purposes. Good. Non-PPR purposes, then that game plan would matter less, especially with the low ADOT that they have. So keep that in mind as far as that goes, if you like that thought process. And then Braxton Berrios here, going up against Buffalo, who have 5 spots ahead of the ECR. I'm at 55. The ECR is 60 on him. This is a gut call. The New York Jets absolutely love Braxton Berrios. Yes, this is a terrible matchup, but this is the kind of matchup that you bring out your trick play with. And who is the trick play god there for the New York Jets? It's Braxton Berrios. Even when they had Mr. Playmaker himself, Breece Hall, he still had one of those big trick plays, or 2 of them, in like those first 6 weeks or however long it's been since Breece Hall has been gone. So I do expect them to try something with Braxton, whether that be a throwing touchdown, a weird pitch play. Who knows what it might be, but I expect them to try it, and that could be 60 yards and a touchdown. You never know. So gut call there with Braxton Berrios, maybe a DFS play that you could sneak in there this week. That is it for the wide receivers. That is it for the rankings videos. So once again, all up on the website as of tomorrow, and you can come and I will have the start-sit video. Also goes over some of the injury updates as of late Friday, early Saturday morning, depending on exactly when I make that video, and also just storylines that are going on in the league that are relevant to fantasy football in some way or another. Go through all of that and cover the Thursday night game when I remember to, also on the Saturday recap video, where you can see me next. And then, of course, join me live Sunday morning, an hour before kickoff, for any start-sit questions, or just ask your questions in the videos. That's fine, too. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.